Okay.
Okay, you can begin.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our presentation of Chapter 9, Being in Communities. We are Group 6, which consists of myself, Shania Ali, Avalon Wren, and Stacey Ann Murray. This chapter discusses the nature of communities, principles of community development, and your role as an active member of your communities of practice. The chapter overview includes the importance of community, elements of community, a common center, communities of practice, the development of community, connecting relational leadership to elements of communities, college communities, and the conclusion. So what are communities? According to the Cambridge Dictionary, a community is defined as the people living in one particular area or people who are considered as a unit because of their common interests, social group, or nationality. So this includes groups of people coming together for a common purpose. For example, I belong to my neighborhood community and the local community of artists. Does anyone want to give an example of a community they belong to?
Well, I think Kostrad.
Well, yes, that's one. That's right. Anybody else? Any clubs? Anything?
I belong to a church community.
Okay. Okay, so we could go to the next one now. So we'll now have a video explaining the importance of communities.
In this episode, we're going to talk about the importance of community. What does that mean? You know, I run with Game Changing Gladiators. I do. I even have a membership called Game Changing Gladiators membership, just because that's what we do. And what I realize is that as a gladiator, as a change agent, as a mover and shaker, as a leader, whatever you call yourself, we have a tendency to default first to running solo. I don't know about you, but that's a natural default to me. And I have to remind myself that while I can do it alone, doing it in a community feels better. While it looks like if I do it alone, I'll do it faster, the reality is the long-term payoff always happens when it's done in a community. And so I want to just for a moment share with you some of the benefits. You already know these benefits, but it took me some time as an entrepreneur, hashtag solopreneur, hashtag lonelypreneur, hashtag do it on my own preneur. It took me some time to really understand the power of community. Community is in place to give you feedback. A community that is willing to give you honest feedback on your brilliance, to share with you where you shine, to share with you where you have a viewpoint that most people don't have, or you have a contribution that many people don't. Community is designed to give you feedback on the areas that might be in your blind spot. That's been the biggest benefit to me in community, is that I see 100% of what I see. You see 100% of what you see. But what you see is here for all of us. And community can start back here and show you what you don't see. That's the first thing, is that community is there to give you feedback. So the second thing that your community is there to do is to be the helium in your balloon. When you're in the weeds and you're working and you're doubling down and you're designing, your goal is to give your dream to a community of gladiators who are willing to be the helium, whether they tweak it or not, whether they give you real feedback or not, they give it in the spirit of being the helium in your balloon. Meaning, if you're the string and you're anchored, they're the helium and they're reminding you to soar. There are other days where you're going to be the helium and you're going to be floating everywhere, and your community is going to be the string to make sure that you don't fly away inside dreams, but that you stay rooted in action steps. The third thing, your community is there to be your accountability group. They're there for you to set realistic goals inside of realistic dates and realistic, doable action items to get there. And this community, this true community of service, of results, inside that community could be a couple of people, a few people, and you meet with them every other week and you go over the conversation of what are you in action on? Just 3 simple questions. What are you in action on? Where do you need help? And what do you want to be celebrated for? So accountability is key, and it's easy. It's not difficult. It's not confrontational. It's real simple. Every 2 weeks, a quick 59-minute call. What are you in action on? Where do you need help? And what do you want to be celebrated for? What I know is that most gladiators who are on my campus, they have a community, accountability community, and then it fades away. They're not forever. Sometimes they're 4 months, sometimes they're 6 months, sometimes they're as long as 2 years. And then you must create another one. And so again, your community is there to help you get to the best version and vision of yourself. They're there to give you feedback. They're there to be the helium in your balloon or the string in your balloon. And they're there to be your accountability community. They're there for you to throw your dreams against the wall and see what sticks. They're there to remind you that when you're not seeing yourself in the best way, the best version of you, to borrow their lenses. Allow yourself to see yourself through their lenses. Now, for so long, I walked by myself. I dreamt by myself. I accomplished by myself. I rarely celebrated my achievements because I was busy on the next. Your community, they're there to cheer you on, to hold you accountable, and to champion your achievements, big or small, their achievements. You will blow your own mind with what you can accomplish with a community. If you can do it really good by yourself, man, it only gets and feels better when you're doing it with a community. I can tell you of all my accomplishments, one of my greatest accomplishments was building a community for myself. One that I call my cheerleaders, my confidants, my ride or dies, and my friends. And many of them I didn't know at all when I started this journey. Remember, this show is not just a mind.
Okay, so the video explains the interdependence of community members. Next slide. Right. Knowing about community, believing in the worth of community, and being skilled at developing and sustaining community are essential aspects of relational leadership. Thinking of each group or organization you are in as a community provides a frame for the interdependence of relational leadership. Gardner states that one of the most essential skills a leader must have is skill in the building and rebuilding of their community. This is because in reality, perfect communities do not exist, but they can strive to be better and more supportive. Relational leadership calls for attending to community as a discipline. This means it must be studied, learned, and practiced. Understanding yourself, others, and the shared purpose of your community focuses participants' attention on the responsibilities, the processes, and the spirit of working together. Shared leadership in the community. Relational leadership asks you to envision the context of the setting as a healthy community, which leads to a paradigm of expectations and norms for working together effectively as participants in shared leadership. Each participant should feel a sense of ownership and shared leadership. This means they must feel that they belong in that community. Elements of community. Goodman described community as a social group that not only shares an identity and structured pattern of interaction, but also a common geographical territory. However, community is not just a place where interaction occurs, but it also requires connection and commitment from members that will sustain relationships and the group's purpose. Communities know they are a collection of individuals whose goals will be accomplished through trust and teamwork. Teamwork requires processes to make decisions, methods of communication, and a commitment to some level of participation by community members. Gardner refers to effective communities as those that practice these 8 elements. 1. Wholeness incorporating diversity. This includes diversity of ideas, diversity of skills, diversity of experiences, and diversity of worldviews that bring to a group shared goals, the many talents of people gathered as a community. According to O'Boyle, promoting diversity is the first step to not just tolerance, but true inclusion and acceptance. This helps us shape and shift our perspectives, cultivate an acceptance that facilitates belonging, and diminish the misconceptions and prejudices that fuel discrimination. 2. A shared culture. Members must be aware of the common values, beliefs, and goals that hold their community together. The shared culture of the group reflects the spirit of the community. 3. Good internal communication. Members of communities continually participate in conversations about the purpose of their group and what matters to them. They must be able to communicate to work past disagreements and find solutions to their common issues. Effective listening is an important part of this. 4. Caring, trust, and teamwork. Support, cooperation, and inclusivity among members is essential. According to an article from Arizona State University, to assemble a successful and effective group, we need to see other members' strengths as a benefit, not a threat. An empowering environment comes out of mutual trust and respect. 5. Group maintenance and governance. The practices in the group must be examined for effectiveness, and changes should be made if necessary. According to Jason et al., successful community organizing tends to follow a cycle. First, assessment, then research, and then mobilization or action, and finally, reflection. 6. Participation and shared leadership tasks. Leaders and other members must work together to accomplish positive change. According to Kokolowski, team leaders should ensure they delegate enough responsibility to all members of their team, involve the team in decision-making, and encourage the team to self-manage its performance to the extent possible. 7. Development of young people or new members. New members must be welcomed and encouraged to participate, as they are the ones who will carry on the community's goals. 8. Links with the outside world. Effective communities do not just exist on their own, but they are in a constant, dynamic interaction with their broader environment. So settings that are inclusive and empowering, in which there is purposeful change being accomplished through ethical and collaborative processes, are the epitome of effective communities. Relational leadership flourishes in settings that value the elements of community. Changing views of community. Conventional views present communities as groups of people who have much in common and may even resemble each other in ideology, race, or class. However, cultural and ethnic diversity and all other forms of diversity are necessary resources for building community. A true community cannot exist without diversity. If all community members saw things the same way, had the same skills, and had the same life experiences, their ability to be resilient and face change would be limited. Different opinions and points of view on particular issues faced by the community may be exactly what is needed to find solutions. This is an explanation of diversity, inclusion, and equity. So diversity is the presence of a wide range of human qualities and attributes, both visible and invisible, within a group, organization, or society. Inclusion is creating an environment where people have both the feeling and the reality of belonging and are able to achieve their full potential. Equity is a condition of fair, inclusive, and respectful treatment that recognizes and acknowledges differing needs and expectations. Equity acknowledges the fact that equal treatment does not always yield equal results. Other traditional views state that communities need face-to-face interaction. However, community also describes those with a common identity and interaction, but without geographic proximity. Examples of this would include the medical community, fans of sports teams or musicians worldwide, and religious communities. Electronic networks have provided new ways for communities of common interest to interact, such as social media, blogs, and video conferencing. It is also possible to feel a sense of community with others without interacting because of the shared concerns or interests you have. For example, you may feel connected to others through your concerns about environmental protection, human rights, crime, or gender inequality. There are those who express concern that electronic communication diminishes community, but using it effectively and responsibly can actually facilitate community. For example, online communication has been most useful for us to maintain communities' interaction during the pandemic. According to Wool, this is important because communities are essentially about relationships with others and a feeling of being connected, which has a major impact on mental health. Without community, people may feel more isolated and lonely. In addition, cyber communities have provided support connections for LGBT students and students with disabilities. Lastly, according to Bonebreak, studies demonstrate that offline and online relationships do not differ in depth or breadth and may even be associated with social well-being. Now I will hand you over to Stacey Ann, who will begin her section of the presentation.
So good night, everyone. Thank you, Shania. Being involved in community is what makes life worth living. We are all involved in a particular community or several. So now I want to ask you guys, can you name a contribution that you made to a community that you are in? Anyone? Okay. So contributions, we all make contributions to our community, whether we know it or not. You know, saying good morning to a neighbor, picking up a piece of paper that you see on the road, stopping for someone to cross the road, that is all parts of making contributions to your community. This is where Common Center comes in. We work together in communities for common purposes. This could be keeping the neighborhood safe by looking out and reporting strange activities, or being part of a youth group that does after-school teaching. One person will be good at math, the other at English, but the purpose is to help children understand their homework. Being a part of a community means that your needs are not always first. There will be times when you need to give up control and let others take the lead. It doesn't mean that your ideas and opinions are not valid. We exhibit the values to which we are committed to in communities. An example of this is when someone is doing a food distribution drive. If this is something that you are committed to, you will make sure that you search for people who are in need and give it to them. During the pandemic, there were a lot of hamper drives, and many people who were deserving didn't receive any. There were people hoarding hampers, people who weren't in need receiving, and some in charge of distributions were accused of unethical behaviors. In other words, the true identity of some of these people was shown. This is what it means when we show our true self. A person committed to community and believing in their values will make a process such as the ones described humane, fair, and above board. You won't take more than you need because you will be mindful of others in the community. You will make distributions easy and anonymous because if you were in a situation, you would not want to be highlighted. So how many of you would have seen on Facebook, especially during the pandemic, the hamper drives, people standing up in the rain, long lines, people passing and taking videos, posting it up on social media? I want to know what you guys think about that. Are you all sleeping or are you all up?
Halfway.
Just thinking.
Listen, if anybody should be sleeping or mad, it's me, because I live Point 14 and today's Borough Friday. But I'm here in class presenting, okay? So wake up, guys.
Yes.
I'm sure you all will have seen it on Facebook, on Instagram, people posting, people taking pictures. and putting it up. Now, if you are in a situation like that, where you are in need, you really wouldn't want somebody to put your picture out there for everybody to see. And that is something about community. You need to think about how it would affect the other person, and you need to think about it as if it was you, because that is what it means to be in a community. You need to be actively involved in your community. Work and time constraints make it difficult to be actively involved in all the communities that you might engage in. You can be peripherally involved or centrally involved. You may concentrate your time on being involved in church, and you may give the homeless person on the street $2 in passing. That's the difference between peripherally and centrally involved. One is where you don't really pay it any mind, you're there, but you're not really there. And the other one is where you actively make the extra effort to be there. However, you must do your part in your community. There has been a shift in communities in the way in which people interact with each other. People are more concerned with groups that have personal outcome other than those with civic outcomes. It's basically, if a person or a group can't do anything for me, then I would not socialize with them. This is critical because the social networks we form by being in communities of practice is necessary for our accomplishments of shared goals, as well as our personal identification and satisfaction. So could you imagine if it is everybody that you meet only studying about themselves? That means nobody holding the open for you, nobody having courtesy on the road, nobody letting you stop to come out. We would be living in chaos because everybody doing their own thing and not studying about somebody. But in order for us to have a good community, we have to study the other person. That means that we have to hold open enough for somebody. When you see somebody trying to come out on a junction, slow down your car, let them pass, wait for the children to cross the road. Just common courtesy is all part of being in a community. Urban villages are the smaller communities within larger systems. These are like sub-communities of the whole community. There can be many urban villages within communities. A good example of this would be in a school. There's a book club, a 4-H club, guides, scouts, etc. These are all considered to be urban villages. Communities have to find ways to engage their members. You need to listen to their views, give incentives for them to be actively engaged. So what I'm basically saying is that even though you are in a community and you're not centrally involved, the community itself needs to give you something to want you to be involved in it. A decision must be made to be in a community, and the community must involve and welcome the individual. Each person must practice contributive justice, and the community must practice distributive justice to its members. The situation requires everyone to play a part, even if it doesn't personally provide them some sort of gain. Communities thrive on serial reciprocity. Wiping up water from a floor that can cause someone to slip is an example of this. You may not fall, but you are preventing one of the members of your group from injuring themselves. There are people who do not help or take part in their communities, and members can move to have them removed. So if you're not playing your part, your community can make a decision that they don't want you to be a part of it. These are things that, like, as in school, if you're not doing well, you're not participating, you can be suspended. So that's just an example of not practicing in a community. If you're in a community of your work, you're not taking part in helping building teamwork, team building exercises. Your boss is going to talk to you once, twice, and sooner or later they are going to fire you because you are not taking part in helping to build their community. So I want to leave you with some reflections that Arun Gandhi learned from his grandfather. These are reflections on what he believes causes violence in life. And they are wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, commerce without morality, science without humanity, worship without sacrifice, politics without principle, and rights without responsibilities. I now pass you on to Avalon Wren as she continues.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm now going to talk about the development of community. A community does not just magically form. It is not just a group of people coming together or meeting for the first time. According to Scott Peck, any group of strangers coming together to create a community goes through 4 distinct and predictable stages of developing true authentic communities. The first stage is pseudo-community. In this stage, group members are extremely pleasant and very polite with one another to avoid all disagreements. It is dominated by superficial communication and a search for similarities. Members want to be loving, withhold some of the truth about themselves and their feelings in order to avoid conflict. Individual differences are minimized, unacknowledged, or ignored. Pseudo community is conflict avoiding, whereas true community is conflict resolving. The second stage is chaos. This stage is similar to the storming stage of Bruce Tuckerman's group development. In this stage, individual differences begin to surface, and the members almost immediately move into chaos. Individual differences come out in the open, and members attempt to eradicate them. It is also during this stage that committee members promote individual agendas and cliques may be formed. This stage can be critical and dangerous because some members may give up and retreat instead of working through the chaos. Scott Peck stated that it is important to find meaning in the idea that even fighting is better than pretending you are not divided. That was on page 94. That is, a group can take 1 or 2 parts out of chaos. Organization, emptiness. Organization leaves the source of fighting untouched by establishing structures and systems to manage and handle the differences of opinion. Chaos is also a stage of uncreative and unconstructive fighting and power struggle. It is no fun. It is common for members to attack not only each other, but also their leader. And it is common for one or more members invariably proposing an organization, that is, to attempt to replace the designated leader. However, as long as the goal is true community, organization as an attempted solution to chaos is unworkable. Chaos is characterized by efforts to manage the differences that begins to surface in the group. That is, a lack of effective listening among members, the formation of cliques, efforts to solve each other's problems, unrealistic expectations and judgment, both of oneself and others. The chaos centers around well-intentioned but misguided attempts by individuals who try to heal or convert others to their way of thinking. The third stage is emptiness. This stage is the realization that many personal feelings, assumptions, ideas, stereotypes, or motives become barriers to truly listening and understanding. The way through chaos to true community is through emptiness. It is the hardest and crucial stage of community development. It means members emptying themselves of barriers to communication. The most common barriers are expectations and preconceptions, prejudices, ideology, theology, and solutions. The need to heal, fix, convert, or solve, and the need to control. This stage of emptiness is ushered in as members begin to share their own brokenness, their defeats, failures, fears, rather than acting that there was no conflict. The fourth stage is true community. In this final stage, a soft quietness descends. It is relatively peaceful, but conflict can still arise. But there are ways to be heard. and the community members usually know they cannot reach consensus or any level of agreement without dissensus or disagreements to create truly better decisions. Members start to speak about their deepest thoughts, and others will simply listen. There will be tears of sorrow and tears of joy. An extraordinary amount of healing begins to occur. The community is characterized by the acknowledgement and respect for individual differences, a depth of listening, and an unusual level of group safety. There is also the possibility of emotional and spiritual healing, shared leadership, respectful conflict, effective group decision making, a sense of belonging, a greater awareness of what stage the group is in and what is needed to move forward. Building a community is creating a field of we out of a lot of eyes. Many groups never get past solo community and find ways to courteously interact and get their work done. That may be sufficient for their purposes, but ongoing groups that are doing difficult work would benefit from recognizing PEC stages and working toward an authentic community. Communities that engage in this developmental process and reach a state of authentically functioning as a community often make the mistake of not recognizing that being a community is a process, not an end state. Communities are not static. They are dynamic. That is, they are constantly changing. Therefore, new members join a group or community. External crisis causes new levels or types of conflict, and key members who had been instrumental to nurturing the community may leave. Communities must also recognize when they need to attend to the cycle of rebuilding a genuine community. As we go to the next slide, we would look at the 7 principles of community. In order to become effective community members, Goody-Kunz proposes that members practice these 7 communities building principles. Number 1, be committed. Commitment to others is prerequisite for a community to exist. Number 2, be mindful. Members must think about what they do and say. They should focus on the process, not the outcome, and they should be contemplative in examining their own behavior. Number 3, be unconditionally accepting. Members should accept others as they are. Do not try to change or control them. They should minimize expectations, prejudices, suspicions, and mistrust. Number 4, be concerned for both themselves and others. That is, engage in dialogue whenever possible and consult others on issues that affect them and be open to their ideas. Members should fight gracefully. Number 5, be understanding. Members should strive to understand others as completely as possible. Number 6, be ethical. Members should engage in behavior that is not a means to an end, but behavior that is morally right in and of itself. And the final principle, be peaceful. Members should not be deceitful or resort to violence. They should not breach value promises or be secretive. They should strive for internal harmony and harmony in relation with others. Next slide, please. I will now look at connecting relational leadership to elements of community. As elements of community were mentioned before, I would briefly share with you all how relational leadership is connected to elements of community. Relational leadership is inclusive. One element of community encourages wholeness. It incorporates diversity and links with the outside world. Communities are committed and unconditionally accepted. Relational leadership is empowering. This is another element of a community. That is, it is a shared culture, group maintenance and governance, development of young people or new members. There must be understanding. There must be concern for both yourself and others. Relational leadership is ethical, whereas true communities are caring, trustworthy, they encourage teamwork, and are ethical. Relational leadership is purposeful. Communities encourage participation and shared leadership tasks. Relational leadership is process-oriented, whereas another element of community is good internal communication. You must be mindful and be peaceful. Next slide, please. I'm now going to talk about college communities. For hundreds of years, college campuses have been described as communities of scholars or as learning communities. Yet in reality, a sense of true community is not always a shared experience. As mentioned before, communities do not magically form. As a matter of fact, hate crimes happen on campus, incivility, incivility can be found in Senate meetings. Some organizations devalue the purposes of other organizations, and not all people know or care about each other. This is not a true community. A study of what students, faculty, and staff would like to change about their campuses, conducted by the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, showed that all groups agree that they need a renewed sense of community, not a return to an older, homogeneous model, but the kaleidoscope community that embraces differences and finds common purpose. The foundation promoted the concept that healthy college communities would be purposeful, open, just, disciplined, caring, and celebrative, so that campuses can take purposeful steps to valuing being together in community. As a miniature version of the society, the entire college campus is a community and includes multiple communities. All of these communities are bound together by the common goals of being a community of people committed to learning and to advancing their own education and education of others. So I know Shania would have mentioned that there's a community of purpose. So we all know our class is a community of purpose, where a group of people go through similar journey to achieve the same objective. So my fellow classmates, I am going to propose a question to you. What do you hope to accomplish throughout your semesters or college life at Custard? Anyone?
Personally, just finishing my degree.
Good. Anyone else? Well, okay. Well, we all know all of us have similar journeys, meaning that we here at Custard, we want to get an A in our subjects. We want to make sure that we graduate from the college with our degree. So that is as if we have the same objective. I could also share a story. Do you have anyone thought about entering the 5K marathon?
There's a 5K marathon.
Yeah, CASAT usually has a 5K marathon each year. I remember one time my classmates and I wanted to enter that marathon as a group. Our objective was to complete the event. But when it was time to sign up, conflict began. Some of the members stated that it was not their idea. Others just went along with it. Others came up with health-related excuses. Then that conflict, some started to take sides. Some people were not talking to one another. So to avoid a further disagreement, we ended up not entering, and we did not complete our objective, which was to enter the race. So if you look at that, our little community, we did not get past chaos, the chaos stage, due to challenges we encountered. Next slide, please. Chapter summary. Different organizations have different purposes and focus. Higher education communities emphasize such elements such as collegiality, learning, scholarship, academic freedom, and student development. A social organization might emphasize friendship, fun, and enriching experiences. A sports team stresses competence, teamwork, and responsibility. Regardless of the special mission and focus of those groups and organizations, the people in them will experience healthy communities if they intentionally practice the discipline of community. As a matter of fact, framing any group or organization as a community of people working together for shared purposes enhances relational leadership. Thinking of that group as a community connects participants to a shared paradigm of expectations and obligations. To flourish, communities require relational leadership, which practices value community as the context in which meaningful change can occur. Next slide, please. So what defines us as a community? Earlier in the presentation, we learned the definition of a community, which is essentially an organization, a group of people who share a common interest, or a group of people living in the same area or have a similar purpose. However, Scott Peck has a more slightly different definition of a community. That is, a community is defined as a group of two or more people who, regardless of the diversity of their backgrounds, have been able to accept and transcend their differences. They are able to communicate openly and effectively and work together towards a common goal, while having a sense of unusual safety with one another. Therefore, the first picture depicts disorganization and violence. That is not a good representation of a community. The second picture defines an authentic community, which involves common purpose, support and encouragement, sharing of ideas, asking questions, shared challenges, willingness to learn, and interdependence. Next slide, please. We would like to share with you all a short video of the impact of effective communities working together.
Okay, come on, everyone, behind schedule. You know what's gotta be done. Move it, move it, move it. Hey, you there, pick up the pace. They're falling behind. Come on, let's go. Everyone, pull together. We got the rest of our hands. You, there. Here we go. Ganito na. Ayo! Wing po! Okay, Chico Tara. Pomelo?
Uh-oh.
Next slide, please. So before we end our presentation, we would like to have a recap of the previous slides. We have a few questions for you to answer. Question 1. Is it important for a relational leader to know about a community? Yes or no? Anybody?
Yes.
That is correct. It is very essential. A relational leader values a community because a community is interdependent. Next question. Which of the following is not an element of a community? Is it A, wholeness incorporating diversity? Is it B, development of young people? Is it C, chaos and internal conflict? Or is it D, links to the outside world?
C.
Very good. Next question. Which of the following is Arun Gandhi's reflection on the causes of violence? Is it A, knowledge without character? B, worship without sacrifice? C, rights without responsibilities? Or D, all of the above?
A,
Anyone?
knowledge without character.
Anyone else? Anyone else want to make a guess? Okay, well, the answer is D, all of the above. Next slide. Which of the following is the 4 stages of developing a community by Peck? Is it A, we move from pseudo community to chaos, then emptiness, then true community? Sorry, is it the other one, B? Is it chaos, emptiness, pseudo community, or true community, or is it the last one? None of the above.
A.
Correct. Next, and the final question. There are something Gudikung's community building principles. How many community building principles there are? Is it A, 3, B, 5, C, 7, D, 9? If anyone can remember. Anyone can make a guess of how many community building principles there are? Going once, going twice?
7.
Yes, correct. Very good. And next slide. And these are works cited pages. So we have now reached the end of our presentation. On behalf of my group members, Shania Ali, Stacey Ann Murray, and myself, Avalon Wren, we would like to thank you for listening. We also look forward to your comments and feedback. Thank you.
So are there any questions that anybody would like to ask? All right. If not, I'll stop the recording.